morning sun rose over the endless desert of planet Naren. The sand shimmered like gold under the light, stretching far beyond what the eye could see. The wind moved slowly, carrying a dry hum that filled the air with silence. It was a quiet world, almost forgotten by time. Yet on this calm day, something unusual stirred in the middle of nowhere. A group of humans had set up a small research camp among the dunes. Their silver tents stood in neat rows and machines hummed softly beside them. Mira, the team leader, stood near a tall scanner studying the readings on her small screen. She was calm but curious, her brown eyes fixed on the map that showed strange energy coming from beneath the sand. The signal was unlike anything she had seen before. It was not from metal, stone, or any known mineral. It was something the machines could not explain. Her team members, Rian, Sola, and Dev, gathered around her. They had been working for weeks, searching for traces of lost civilizations that once roamed this planet. Naren was old and mysterious. Long before humans settled there, ancient travelers from unknown origins had built cities now swallowed by the desert. Many had tried to uncover the secrets of Naren, but most left empty-handed. Mira's team, however, believed that this new signal might be the key to something greater. Rian looked at the scanner and shook his head slowly. The signal does not fade. It grows stronger as we move closer to the center, he said. Sola smiled softly. Maybe we finally found something worth all this sand in our boots. Mira kept her gaze on the map. It feels deep. Whatever it is buried under at least 60 meters of sand. They decided to begin excavation that very day. The team activated a large digger drone that started moving the sand layer by layer. The hours passed quietly. The wind picked up and brushed against their tents. The sun climbed higher, burning bright above them. Mira stood under a small shade, drinking water and watching the digger's progress. Each time a new section of sand was cleared, the scanner adjusted its signal, drawing a sharper image. By late afternoon, something solid appeared beneath the golden dust. The digger hit a surface that made a dull echo, as if it had touched something vast and hollow. The team rushed forward. Together, they brushed the remaining sand away with soft tools, careful not to damage what they had found. The surface was smooth and black, not rough like stone, not cold like metal. It was darker than anything they had ever seen, a surface that seemed to drink in the sunlight. Ryan placed his hand on it, but he pulled back immediately. "It feels warm," he said, "but there is no heat source." Mira knelt beside the black surface. The air around it felt strange, almost heavy. The light from the sun did not bounce off it. Instead, the surface swallowed it completely, leaving no reflection. When she looked closely, she thought she saw faint ripples moving under the dark layer like shadows swimming below water. "It is not natural," Mira said softly. "This could be older than everything we know." The team worked until the sun began to set. As the light faded, the black surface grew darker until it blended perfectly with the night. Only the camp lights gave it shape. By evening, they had uncovered one side of a giant structure, smooth, slanted, and broad like the side of a pyramid. None of them spoke for a long moment. The desert wind whispered quietly, carrying grains of sand that glowed faintly in their lamps. Sola broke the silence first. "A pyramid. But why build it here on a planet where no one lives now?" Mira looked at the shape again. Maybe it was not built here. Maybe this planet grew around it. We might be looking at something far older than this world. That night, Mira sat outside her tent with her small data tablet. She read the scanner's report again and again. The readings made no sense. The structure gave off a pulse every few minutes, a soft wave of energy that her instruments could barely detect. It was not strong, but it was steady, as if the pyramid itself was alive, breathing quietly beneath the stars. She looked up at the night sky. Naren's moons hung low, their pale light touching the dunes. The desert looked peaceful, but Mira felt something beneath that peace. The air had changed since they found the pyramid. It carried a silent rhythm, almost like a heartbeat. She tried to tell herself it was only her imagination. But deep inside, she felt that the pyramid had been waiting for someone to find it. The next morning came with a thin layer of mist, a rare sight on Naren. Mira woke early and walked toward the site before the others. The pyramid stood partly uncovered, half buried in shadow. She placed her hand on its surface again. This time she felt a faint vibration under her palm. It was gentle and constant. When Rian and Sola joined her, they noticed the same. The vibration came at regular intervals like the ticking of an unseen clock. Dev ran a surface scan, but the readings failed to show any mechanism. "There are no openings, no cracks, nothing," he said, looking puzzled. "It is a single piece of material. Even our strongest signal cannot pass through." Mira looked thoughtful. "If it wanted to stay hidden, this is how it would do it. A structure that light cannot touch and machines cannot read." The day went on with more scanning and observation. The team took turns recording every detail, the texture, the sound, the faint warmth. As the sun moved across the sky, they noticed that the pyramid's shadow never changed its position. It stayed fixed in the same place as though the light did not affect it at all. That discovery brought a quiet awe among them. Later that afternoon, a soft wind began to rise again. The sand around the pyramid swirled gently. Mira stood watching it, shielding her eyes. Then, without warning, the wind grew stronger. The sky turned golden, and grains of sand flew through the air. A sandstorm was forming faster than usual. "Everyone to the shelter," Mira called. The team hurried back to their tents and secured the equipment. The storm came down with a deep roar, covering the pyramid from view. The wind howled for hours. Inside her tent, Mira sat in silence, listening to the constant hiss of sand hitting the outer walls. She tried to rest but could not. She kept thinking about the pyramid. She felt it under the storm, calm and unmoving. When the storm finally passed, the camp was covered in a thin layer of sand again. The air was still and heavy. Mira stepped outside and looked toward the site. Her breath caught for a moment. The surface of the pyramid was visible again, but it looked different. Near the base, a wide dark line had appeared where none had been before. The others gathered beside her. Ryan pointed to it. "That was not there yesterday." Sola nodded slowly. "It looks like an entrance." The line extended from one side to the other, forming the shape of a tall door. The sand at its base looked freshly moved, as though something had opened during the storm. Mira approached carefully and placed her hand on the edge. The surface felt the same, warm, smooth, alive. She leaned closer, peering into the dark line. There was no reflection, no light, only pure darkness that seemed to pull the eyes inward. She stepped back slightly. "It is open," she said softly. "But it is not empty." Rian looked uneasy. "Do you think the storm did this?" Mira shook her head. "No storm can carve such perfect lines." It was waiting. The wind had stopped completely. The desert was silent again. Even the usual hum of the scanners seemed distant. The pyramid stood tall and silent, the new doorway like a single breath between two long centuries. Mira felt a calm curiosity instead of fear. She knew this discovery would change everything they thought they knew about Naren, maybe even about humanity itself. That night she sat by the small campfire, writing in her digital log. Her words were simple but filled with wonder. She described the pyramid, the darkness, the pulse, and the sudden opening. She wrote how she felt drawn toward it, as if the structure had called her by name without speaking. Before she went to rest, she looked once more toward the site. The pyramid rose above the dunes like a mountain of shadow. The stars reflected faintly around it, but not upon it. It stood untouched by time, light, or sound. Somewhere deep inside, Mira knew this was only the beginning of something far greater than an archaeological find. The pyramid had waited for countless years in silence. Now that humans had arrived, it would no longer sleep. And far beneath its dark walls, something stirred. A memory of light hidden in eternal night, ready to awaken once more. Morning light spread slowly across the desert of Naren. The air felt still and the dunes shone under the soft sun. The sandstorm had passed during the night, leaving the camp quiet and calm again. The research tent stood half buried, but the machines were safe. Mira was the first to wake. She stepped outside and looked toward the pyramid. The black surface stood out against the golden sand, silent and unchanged except for the strange doorway that had appeared after the storm. The dark opening looked like a deep line in space, wider now than it had been the night before. It gave no reflection, no light. Mira watched it for a long time, unsure if it was truly a door or some kind of illusion. The air around it shimmered faintly as though the sunlight refused to touch it. Soon the others joined her. Ryan carried a scanner in one hand, still wiping sand from his face. Sola brought a lantern in case they decided to go inside. Dev followed with a small camera drone. "The door is real," Ryan said after taking a few readings. "The storm did not cut it. The surface itself changed." Dev looked at the line nervously. "So it opened by itself." Mira nodded. "It seems to have chosen when to open. Maybe it reacts to the environment or the storm energy. Sola looked thoughtful. Or it reacts to us. The four stood in silence. There was something almost human about the way the pyramid waited. It did not threaten or move, but its presence felt alive. The stillness made every breath sound loud. Mira finally said, "We came here to discover, not to turn away. We will go inside, but carefully. Record everything." They prepared for the entry. Each of them wore a lightweight suit with lights on their wrists and small breathing filters for the dust. The lanterns and cameras were tested twice. Ryan checked the scanner again. The signal inside was unclear, as if something interfered with it. He looked uncertain, but Mira gave him a calm smile. "Whatever is inside has been waiting for a long time," she said. "Let's not keep it waiting longer." They approached the pyramid slowly. As they came near the entrance, the air grew cooler. The warmth from the black surface faded, replaced by a quiet chill. The sand under their feet became harder, almost like stone. Mira stopped a step before the doorway and reached her hand toward the darkness. Her fingertips met something that felt like air and water at the same time. For a moment her light bent strangely, vanishing into the dark. Then with a soft pull, her hand passed through completely. She took a deep breath and stepped inside. The others followed her, one by one. Inside the pyramid, the light from their lamps stretched far but did not travel in a straight line. It bent, curved, and shimmered as if the space itself was different. The walls were smooth and black like polished glass, but they did not reflect anything. The team's footsteps sounded soft, almost muted, and their voices felt swallowed by the air. "This place absorbs sound," Dev whispered. Rian looked around carefully. "And light. It behaves as if it is alive." The hallway they entered was wide and high, forming a perfect triangle that led deeper into the pyramid. Strange faint lines ran along the walls, pulsing softly like dim veins of silver. The patterns seemed to shift as they moved, almost guiding them forward. Mira led the group slowly, touching the wall at times. It was smooth and cool with a faint vibration beneath. She noticed that each step made the silver lines brighten for a second before dimming again. It felt as though the pyramid was recognizing their presence. They moved deeper, passing through several open spaces that looked like halls. Each hall was perfectly clean, without a single grain of sand inside. The air smelled faintly of ozone, fresh and sharp. Rian stopped suddenly and raised his hand. "Look there," he said. Ahead, one of the walls began to shimmer. It changed like liquid, forming shapes and shadows. The group watched as the surface rippled and a faint image appeared. It showed a landscape of stars, thousands of them, and among them small shapes of ships moving slowly. Then the image changed again, showing human figures standing under strange skies. Sola gasped softly. "Those are humans. It cannot be possible." Mira felt her heart beat faster. "Record everything," she said quietly. The image played without sound, showing scenes of cities floating above oceans, towers that reached the clouds, and gates of light that opened into empty space. The people in those images wore simple clothing and moved with calm grace. They looked like humans, but somehow older, wiser, as if they came from a time before history began. The image then faded, and the wall returned to its dark, smooth state. For a moment, the group stood in silence, trying to understand what they had seen. "Is this a message?" Ryan asked. "Maybe it is a record," Mira said. "A memory stored inside the walls." They continued walking, guided by the glowing lines. The air grew thicker as they went deeper. Every step felt heavier, but none of them wanted to stop. The deeper halls became more complex, with small doorways leading to side chambers. Some rooms held strange floating stones that spun slowly in the air, glowing faintly when approached. Dev sent the camera drone to one of them. When the drone touched the stone, a soft sound filled the air, a low hum that resonated inside their chest rather than their ears. The stone projected a faint light that formed another image. This time it showed a group of humans standing before a dark sphere, similar in color to the pyramid's walls. They placed their hands on it and beams of light rose into the sky, forming a web across the stars. The picture then vanished. Mira spoke quietly. "They built something vast across many worlds. Maybe this pyramid is part of that network." Sola nodded. "A place made to remember." The realization filled them with quiet awe. Humanity had always believed it was young among the stars, but this evidence suggested otherwise. Somewhere in the distant past, humans might have traveled further than anyone had imagined. As they continued forward, the walls began to curve upward, forming a tall dome. At the center of the dome stood a pillar that glowed softly. The air here felt different, lighter, and more peaceful. Mira approached the pillar and noticed tiny symbols carved around its base. The symbols looked like old Earth languages. Some resembled ancient lines from long-lost scripts. She traced her fingers over them. These are Earth symbols. How can that be? Ryan looked amazed. If these people left Earth before our known history, it would mean humanity is far older than we think. Mira smiled faintly. Then we are not just explorers. We are returning home to what our ancestors began. The pillar responded to her touch. A soft light spread from it, flowing across the floor and climbing the walls. The entire chamber brightened, revealing patterns of stars carved across every surface. The lines connected to form constellations that none of them recognized. A voice filled the chamber, calm and clear. It was not loud, but every word felt gentle and warm. The language was strange, yet they understood it somehow. To those who find this place, the voice said, "You are the children of the first light. We built these halls before the suns were old. We left our memories in the dark to wait for your return." The team stood frozen, listening. The voice continued, "When the light of your world reached the edge of the stars, the shadow followed. We built sanctuaries to keep the flame alive. You have come at last, carrying that flame within you. The knowledge is yours again." The light then faded slowly, leaving the chamber in soft darkness once more. Mira felt a deep calm spread through her. It was not fear, but a quiet sense of belonging. The pyramid was not a tomb. It was a home, built by humans who had traveled far beyond memory. The team stayed silent for a long time, absorbing what they had heard. The realization was heavy yet beautiful. Humanity had not been alone at the beginning of the stars. It had been there from the start, building, exploring, and leaving signs for its descendants to find. When they finally turned to leave, Mira looked back at the glowing pillar. "We will return," she said softly. "We will learn what they left for us." As they stepped back into the hallway, the silver lines on the walls brightened again, as if the pyramid understood their promise. The path toward the entrance lit up gently, guiding them out. When they emerged into the sunlight, the desert seemed brighter than before. The wind carried a soft tune that sounded almost like a welcome. The pyramid stood behind them, silent again, but its door remained open, shining faintly in the morning light. Mira looked at her team. This is not just a discovery. It is a reminder. Humanity came from the light, and we have found the shadow that protected it. They walked back to their camp with steady steps, the memory of the calm voice echoing in their hearts. None of them spoke for a while, but all of them felt the same quiet wonder. They had seen the truth hidden beneath the sands of Naran. The pyramid had waited for countless years, guarding the story of the first humans who touched the stars. As the sun climbed higher, its rays reached the top of the black structure. For the first time, the surface shimmered with a faint glow, as though the sunlight had finally found a way to touch the darkness. And in that quiet glow, Mira felt certain of one thing: the story of humanity had only just begun. The morning after their discovery inside the pyramid, the camp on the desert floor felt different. The air was calm, but something invisible seemed to hum beneath it, a faint rhythm that matched the pulse they had once felt inside the black walls. Mira woke early again. She sat outside her tent and watched the horizon where the sun began to rise, painting the sand with warm gold. The light touched the pyramid, but its surface stayed the same deep black, absorbing every ray and giving nothing back. Yet now Mira could sense that the darkness was no longer asleep. Rian joined her quietly with a mug of warm drink. He looked at the pyramid and said, "It feels like it knows we are still here." Mira nodded. "It does. Yesterday it spoke to us. That means it is listening as well." Soon Sola and Dev came out, their faces thoughtful. None of them had slept deeply. The memory of the calm voice inside the pyramid still echoed in their minds. It had spoken in words older than history, yet they had understood every meaning. The idea that humans had built sanctuaries like this one across the galaxy was almost impossible to believe, but the evidence stood before them, strong and real. Mira decided they needed to go back inside. There were still many unanswered questions, and she believed the pyramid wanted to show them more. Before entering again, the team checked their suits and tools carefully. The sunlight had grown stronger. But the pyramid's entrance remained untouched, waiting in perfect silence. As they stepped inside, the air changed once more, cool and still, as if the world outside no longer existed. The long hallway welcomed them with its soft silver lines glowing faintly along the walls. The light responded to their presence again, brightening where they stepped. Mira felt a calm energy in the air. It was not like electricity, but more like emotion, quiet and warm, spreading gently through the space. They followed the same path as before until they reached the great dome where the glowing pillar stood. The chamber was silent except for the faint hum that filled the air like a heartbeat. The pillar still shone softly, waiting for them. Mira approached it and placed her hand on its surface. The moment her fingers touched it, the light in the chamber began to change. The floor glowed brighter, revealing patterns they had not noticed earlier. Circles and lines formed shapes that looked like constellations, and symbols appeared between them. Each symbol seemed to tell a small part of a greater story. Rian began to record everything with his scanner. "It is a map," he said. "Not just of stars, but of places. Look at these marks. They could be other pyramids." Sola traced one of the glowing lines with her eyes. "If this map is real, there are dozens of these across the galaxy. Maybe hundreds." Mira felt both wonder and responsibility. Then we are standing inside one of humanity's oldest creations. It was not only made to hide, but to connect. Suddenly, the pillar's light shifted again. The walls around them rippled and became clear like glass. The air shimmered, and images began to form all around them. They were standing inside what looked like a memory. They saw a city built under the stars with buildings shaped like the pyramid itself but smaller. People moved peacefully between them. The people looked human, though their clothing and tools were unlike anything the team had seen before. They carried bright crystals that floated above their hands, and their eyes reflected a soft golden light. A voice spoke again, calm and distant. "This is how we lived before the silence came. We built worlds from light and shared knowledge through the halls of memory." The scene changed to show great ships leaving the city, moving across the sky. When the silence began to spread, we sent the light to safe places. The pyramids were built to protect it until the time of return. Mira watched in silence. The word silence sounded strange to her. It did not mean war or destruction. It seemed to mean something deeper, like emptiness or loss of understanding. The image faded, leaving the chamber quiet again. Ryan whispered, "So the silence might be why we forgot." Something erased their story from time. Mira nodded, "But they believed we would come back. That means they trusted their descendants to find what they lost." The thought filled the team with a quiet pride. Humanity was not a new traveler among the stars. They were a returning one, rediscovering the path their ancestors had once walked. The light from the pillar dimmed again, but the floor in front of them began to open slowly. A section of the smooth surface sank down without a sound, revealing a circular stairway that led further below. The team exchanged glances. Mira took a deep breath and stepped forward. "We go together," she said. The stairs glowed softly as they descended. The air grew cooler and the hum became stronger. After a short walk, they reached another chamber, smaller but brighter than the one above. In the center floated several dark stones shaped like smooth cubes. They hovered quietly, spinning in slow motion. Each stone glowed from within with a faint blue light. Sola stepped closer and whispered, "They look alive." Mira nodded. They could be memory cores. Ryan took out a small sensor and aimed it at one of the stones. The reading showed waves of encoded energy, similar to data but much more complex. "This is not mechanical," he said softly. "It feels like it is made of both matter and thought." Mira touched one of the stones gently. The moment her hand brushed against it, the room filled with soft light. The stone began to project images again, but these were more focused than before. They showed maps, symbols, and words that glowed in the air. Mira saw equations, drawings of stars, and the faces of people she did not know but somehow felt connected to. A soft voice came from the stone, speaking in the same calm tone as before. "We placed knowledge in the deep chambers. It is the seed of what we were. To awaken it, one must carry the same light within." The glow reflected in Mira's eyes. She felt warmth spreading through her chest, a strange mix of joy and sadness. "We are the light," she said quietly. That is what they meant. Sola placed her hand on another stone and it began to hum softly. joining the first one in a slow rhythm. Soon all the stones around them were glowing together, spinning in harmony. The entire chamber lit up with a peaceful brightness. The walls shimmered, showing words that seemed to translate themselves into simple human language. To those who came after, the writing said, "You are not alone in the universe. You were the first to walk among the stars, and you will be the last to forget their song. Keep the memory, and the flame will never fade." Dev looked around in awe. They built all this to remind us of who we are. Rian smiled faintly. And we forgot for so long. But the memory waited patiently. The lights began to calm. One by one, the stones returned to their gentle spin, and the room became quiet again. Mira felt that they had seen only a part of the whole truth. There was more hidden below, perhaps deeper chambers with even older memories. But she also felt that the pyramid wanted them to learn slowly, step by step, as if it did not wish to overwhelm them. When they climbed back to the upper chamber, the silver lines along the walls glowed brighter, forming new patterns. Mira realized that the pyramid had recorded their visit, adding their presence to its memory. They had become a part of its long story. Outside, the desert waited, calm and golden under the afternoon sun. When they stepped back into the open, the air felt warmer and lighter. Mira looked at the pyramid's shadow stretching across the sand. It no longer looked like a shape of fear. It looked like a guardian standing under the sun. That evening, the team sat together near their campfire. The sky above Naren was filled with stars, and one of its moons had begun to rise. They talked quietly, sharing their thoughts. Ryan said, "If there are more pyramids like this scattered across the stars, maybe they are all still waiting. Maybe each one holds a piece of the same story." Sola smiled. "Then our journey is not ending here. This is just the first step." Mira looked at the glowing pyramid in the distance. Humanity has always looked up at the stars and wondered if we were alone. Now we know we were here long before we even asked that question. We are the echo of something ancient, something still shining inside us. The camp grew quiet again. The night air felt calm and endless. In the distance, the black pyramid shimmered faintly, as if the stars themselves had begun to reflect on its surface for the first time. The once dark monument now seemed alive, holding the whispers of the past and the promise of tomorrow. Mira closed her eyes for a moment and listened. The soft hum from the pyramid was still there, steady and calm, like the heartbeat of something eternal. She knew they would return to explore the deeper chambers soon, but for now, she allowed herself to rest under the same stars her ancestors had once crossed. The pyramid of darkness had opened its heart to them, and the light it guarded had begun to awaken again. Humanity's forgotten song was ready to be heard once more, carried across the silent desert of Naren and far beyond the edge of time. The sun rose slowly over the endless desert of Naren, and its light painted the dunes in shades of gold and red. The camp stood quietly beside the pyramid, which looked the same as ever from the outside. Its surface still absorbed all light, but Mira and her team now knew what lay within. The darkness was not emptiness. It was a shield that held the oldest memories of humanity. Mira stood near the pyramid, looking at its sharp edges glowing faintly under the morning sun. The air was cool, and the sound of the wind carried a soft rhythm. She closed her eyes and listened carefully. Deep within the black structure, she could still sense the faint hum of energy. It felt calm and alive, like a gentle breath under the ground. Rian walked up beside her, holding his scanner. "The readings have changed again," he said. "The pulse is stronger today. It is as if the pyramid has woken up." Mira nodded. "It knows we are here. It trusts us now." Sola joined them with her notebook. Her face was calm, but her eyes were bright with curiosity. "Do you think it is trying to tell us more?" "Maybe," Mira said. "Yesterday it showed us memories. Today it might show us meaning." They decided to return inside after breakfast. Each member moved carefully, checking their tools and recorders. Dev prepared the drones again to fly deeper this time, in case there were new paths below the chamber of stones. When they entered the pyramid, the air greeted them like before, cool, silent, and soft. The faint light from the silver lines along the walls brightened with their arrival. The lines pulsed in gentle waves, almost like a welcome. Mira led the way, and her steps echoed lightly through the hallway. As they reached the main chamber, they noticed something new. The pillar that had spoken to them before now glowed brighter, and the ceiling above it shimmered faintly as if a hidden pattern was forming. The team spread out, watching in awe as the dark surface of the walls began to change again. The smooth black texture slowly filled with color. Faint blue and white patterns began to appear, like soft light trapped beneath glass. Then the shapes came alive, forming moving images that surrounded them. The images showed countless stars spinning in the dark. Between them moved lines of light that connected worlds together. Mira realized it was a map of the galaxy, but far larger than any human map. It showed paths that no one had ever traveled and clusters of stars that human ships had never reached. The calm voice returned, filling the chamber once more. You stand where the first light was hidden. The darkness that surrounded it was made to protect, not to harm. Light cannot exist without shadow, and memory cannot survive without silence. Mira felt warmth in her chest as she listened. The words felt more like thoughts than sounds, reaching directly into her mind. The voice continued. When the silence came, we did not fight it with weapons. We built places of stillness where the flame of thought could remain untouched. You have found one such place. You carry the same light we carried, Sola whispered softly. The light within the dark. That is what it means. The walls shifted again, showing new images. They saw groups of humans standing together under twin suns. Their eyes glowed faintly with golden light, the same light Mira had seen reflected in the memory stones. These ancient humans placed their hands on small black crystals, which began to shine from within. Then they sealed them inside structures that looked like miniature versions of the pyramid on Naren. The calm voice said, "The seed of light is not in these halls. It is in you. The memory of the first journey was written in your blood and your thoughts. When you reached the stars again, the light awakened. That is why the doors opened for you." Ryan looked amazed. So the pyramids respond only to humans. They were built to wait for us. Mira nodded slowly. We are the key they were made to recognize. The images changed again. They showed a planet covered in green forests and blue oceans. Floating above it were thousands of shining points of light, connected by thin lines that formed a web across the sky. The light web pulsed gently, then faded as clouds of darkness spread over it. The silence fell. The voice said, "Knowledge was forgotten. Time erased the names of those who built. But the flame remained safe here, waiting for the children of the light to return." The air grew warm as the final image faded. The pillar's light spread across the floor, forming a bright circle around the team. The silver lines on the walls brightened until the entire room glowed like the inside of a star. Mira raised her hand to shield her eyes, but the light was not harsh. It was soft and peaceful. She felt a wave of emotion, calm, joy, and something deeper like recognition. She understood then that the light was not meant to blind or overwhelm. It was meant to remind them that humanity had always carried something pure within. Even when forgotten, when the light faded, they found themselves standing in quiet darkness again, except for the soft glow of the pillar. The air was still and their hearts felt full. Sola spoke softly, her voice barely above a whisper. "I think we just witnessed the memory of the first dawn of humanity." Mira smiled. "And the meaning of the darkness. It was not an enemy, but a guardian." Ryan walked toward the pillar and examined its base. He found small shapes engraved there that had not been visible before. They looked like a path of steps moving upward, leading to a symbol of a bright circle surrounded by smaller ones. He pointed to it. "This could be a direction. Maybe it shows us how to reach the next sanctuary." Mira touched the same symbol and the pillar responded with a low hum. A beam of soft light rose from its top, touching the ceiling. The light expanded and formed a pattern of stars again. But this time one of the stars shone brighter than the rest. It blinked 3 times and then stayed glowing. Rian quickly marked the coordinates in his scanner. "That might be the next pyramid," he said with excitement. "It could be out there, still waiting." Mira smiled gently. "Then this is not only a message from the past. It is an invitation to continue what they started." The voice returned one last time, quieter than before. "Carry the light beyond the silence. When you find the others, the memory will become whole again." The team stood silently as the voice faded into the air. They felt as if the pyramid itself was breathing a farewell. The glow along the walls softened and the humming slowed to a peaceful rhythm. The chamber returned to its stillness. Mira turned to her team. "We have what we need. Let us take this knowledge back and share it. Humanity deserves to know its true story." They began walking back toward the entrance. As they moved, the silver lines behind them dimmed gently, as though the pyramid was falling back into rest. When they reached the outer doorway, the sunlight touched their faces again. The transition from the cool darkness to the bright desert felt strange but comforting. The pyramid's surface shone faintly in the morning light. For the first time, the black walls seemed to reflect a soft glow, as if light was rising from within instead of being absorbed. Mira looked up at it, feeling both gratitude and peace. Ryan said quietly, "It is no longer only the pyramid of darkness." Mira smiled. It never was. It was the light that never stopped waiting. They returned to their camp, packing their data and equipment carefully. Dev sent messages to their research station in orbit, preparing to transmit the new coordinates and findings. Sola wrote notes in her journal, recording every small detail of what they had seen and felt. That evening, as the sun began to set, the desert turned orange and red again. Mira stood alone near the pyramid, watching the sky. The first stars appeared one by one. The surface of the pyramid reflected a faint shimmer of starlight, something it had never done before. It looked almost alive, glowing softly under the darkening sky. Mira placed her hand on its surface. It felt warm again, pulsing gently. She spoke quietly, as if to the ancient builders themselves. "We will keep your promise. We will find the others." The hum beneath her palm answered with a faint rhythm, as if acknowledging her words. She smiled and stepped back, joining her team near the fire. They sat together, watching the stars rise. None of them spoke much, but they all felt the same sense of connection. Somewhere out there, beyond the distant constellations, other pyramids waited in silence. Each one held a story, a piece of the same ancient light. Humanity's ancestors had scattered their wisdom among the stars, trusting that someday their descendants would find it again. Now, that time had come. The darkness had opened its heart, revealing the light within, and under the quiet desert sky, the Pyramid of Narin stood no longer as a mystery of shadow, but as a beacon of hope, a sign that the light of humanity could survive even where sunlight never reached. The stars still shone in the sky when Mira woke before sunrise. The desert was silent except for the soft whisper of the wind moving across the dunes. She stepped out of her tent and looked toward the pyramid that had changed their understanding of everything they knew. It stood dark and calm, but this time there was a faint glow deep within its surface, as if light was gently breathing inside it. Mira walked closer, her boots leaving quiet prints on the sand. She stopped a few steps away and stood still. The air was cool and filled with a soft rhythm. She placed her hand on the pyramid's side and felt the familiar warmth, steady and calm. For the first time, she did not feel curiosity or confusion. She felt peace. Behind her, the rest of the team began to stir. Ryan stepped out first, yawning, followed by Sola and Dev. They greeted Mira with quiet smiles. No one wanted to speak loudly, as if words might disturb the calm that surrounded the pyramid. Ryan said softly, "It feels alive this morning." The readings show a steady pulse, stronger than before. Sola added, "Maybe it knows we are leaving soon." Mira nodded slowly. "It does. It has given us what we came to find. Now we must carry it forward." They spent the morning preparing for departure. Their camp had been there for weeks, and the sand had already begun to reclaim parts of it. The team packed their instruments, folded the tents, and checked their transport. Dev worked carefully with the communication unit to send the data they had gathered to their orbiting ship. By midday, everything was ready. The sun shone bright above them, and the desert shimmered with heat. Yet even in that light, the pyramid's surface still held its soft glow, calm and deep like the heart of a star. Before leaving, Mira wanted to take one last look inside. She told her team, and they followed her to the black entrance that had once appeared after the great storm. The doorway stood open as though waiting to say farewell. Inside, the cool air welcomed them again. The silver lines along the walls glowed faintly, leading them to the main chamber where the pillar stood. It shone softly, brighter than the last time. The hum was steady and warm, filling the space with peace. Mira approached the pillar and touched its smooth surface. The light spread gently, rising toward the ceiling and forming patterns like flowing water. The calm voice they had come to know spoke once more, soft and kind. "You have walked through the darkness and found the light that was always within you. This place will rest again, waiting for others who seek truth with open hearts." Mira listened carefully. The voice was faint, but every word filled her with quiet strength. "The path does not end here," it continued. "Across the stars, the light still waits. Each sanctuary holds a song of remembrance. Together they form the music of the first dawn. Carry that music with you and you will awaken the rest. The chamber fell silent again. The pillar's glow slowly faded to a gentle pulse. Mira smiled and bowed her head slightly in respect. "Thank you," she whispered. "We will not forget." As the team left the chamber, they noticed the walls beginning to dim behind them, as if the pyramid was returning to its long sleep. The silver lines faded one by one until the hallway became dark again. When they stepped out into the sunlight, the black surface shimmered faintly before turning completely still. The doorway that had opened so mysteriously began to fade until it was gone, leaving only smooth stone. The pyramid had sealed itself again, silent and perfect as before. Rian looked at it with wonder. "It closed itself. It really was waiting for us," Mira nodded. "It will wait again, maybe for centuries, until others come when the time is right." They stood there for a while, watching as the sun climbed higher in the sky. The heat made the horizon dance with soft waves of light, but the pyramid remained clear and unmoving. Its shadow stretched across the sand like a calm reminder of something greater than time. By afternoon, the team boarded their transport and prepared for takeoff. As the engines began to hum, Mira looked out of the window one last time. The pyramid grew smaller in the distance, a dark shape against the golden sea of sand. Then, as the sunlight shifted, a flash of brightness touched its top. For the first time, it reflected the sun's light back into the sky. It was faint but real, a glimmer that seemed to reach toward the heavens. Sola gasped softly. "Look at that." The sunlight finally reached it. Mira smiled. It was never about the sun outside. It was about the light within. Their transport rose higher, leaving the desert below. The view expanded until they could see the vast stretch of Naren's landscape, endless and empty, except for the single black pyramid shining faintly in the middle of it. It looked like a small star resting on the planet's surface. When they reached their ship in orbit, they transferred all the data they had gathered. The maps, symbols, and star coordinates from the pillar were stored safely. Ryan worked on decoding the coordinates that had been shown as the next location. It pointed to a distant system beyond the edge of known space. He looked at the map and said, "It is far but reachable. If we follow this path, we might find the next pyramid." Mira placed a hand on his shoulder. "Then that will be our next journey." The story does not end here. For the next few days, the ship traveled through quiet space, leaving Naren behind. From the viewing deck, the planet looked peaceful, with its deserts glowing faintly under the twin moons. The pyramid's position could still be seen from orbit, a small dark point that reflected a tiny spark of light. Each night, Mira sat near the observation window and thought about everything they had learned. She thought about the ancient humans who had built the sanctuaries, about the silence that had taken away their memory, and about the hope that had survived through ages of darkness. She realized that humanity had never been lost. It had simply been asleep, waiting to remember. Rian joined her one evening, carrying 2 cups of warm drink. He sat beside her quietly before saying, "Do you think there are still people out there who remember all of this?" Mira smiled gently. "Maybe not in the way we remember, but their work, their message, it never faded. The light stayed alive inside us, even if we did not see it. We found it again because it was always part of who we are." Sola came in, hearing their voices. "Then it means humanity was never really small," she said. "We just forgot how wide our story was." Mira nodded. "And now we have the chance to write the next chapter." Days passed and the ship neared the edge of their charted route. The stars ahead looked brighter, as if welcoming them. The crew gathered in the control room to review their next course. Ryan plotted a path toward the coordinates shown by the pyramid's pillar. It led to a quiet star with a single blue planet. Dev looked up from his screen. "If the other sanctuary is there, it might hold even more answers. Maybe it will show how they built all of this." Mira smiled. "Whatever we find, it will remind us again who we truly are." As the ship turned toward the new direction, the engines hummed gently. The stars outside seemed to move slowly, stretching like threads of silver across the darkness. The crew felt a sense of unity and purpose. That night, as Mira looked out at the stars, she remembered the calm voice from the pyramid saying, "Carry the light beyond the silence." Those words stayed in her heart like a promise. She closed her eyes for a moment and whispered softly, "We will carry it." Behind them, Naren continued to shine under its twin moons. The black pyramid stood untouched again, its doors closed, its secrets safe. Yet it was no longer only a monument of mystery. It had become a beacon, a bridge between the forgotten past and the hopeful future. On the planet's surface, as night fell, the winds moved across the dunes, shaping them slowly. The first rays of dawn touched the pyramid once more. This time the light did not vanish. It spread gently over the surface, giving it a soft glow. The pyramid no longer hid from the sun. It accepted its warmth and reflected it faintly across the desert. The people of Narin, those few who lived far from the desert in small settlements, would later see a strange brightness glowing in the distance where the black sands met the horizon. They would speak of it with quiet wonder, calling it the place where sunlight lives inside the dark. Far away, Mira and her team continued their journey through the stars. Their ship glided silently, carrying the memories of the first sanctuary and the map that would lead them to the next. Humanity's lost legacy was awakening again, one world at a time. Mira looked out at the shining stars and felt the same warmth she had felt when she touched the pyramid's surface. It was the light of connection, the bond between past and future, between what humanity once was and what it could still become. The Pyramid of Darkness had been the first to speak, but it would not be the last. Others waited in silence across the galaxy, ready to awaken when humanity arrived. And so, as the ship moved deeper into the unknown, the dawn that had begun over Narin spread quietly through the stars, a dawn not of sunlight, but of understanding, memory, and hope.